Welcome to Fusion Fiction with your host, Madhulika Ra Chauhan, where every tale brings you closer to the heart of life itself. Today, we have a deeply emotional journey, one filled with love and a delicate balance that keeps a relationship going. Underneath the bright lights, there's a story we both hide. Between the silence and the smiles, it's you and I, side by side. The world spins on, but in your touch, I find my way home. Even when the past haunts, with you, I'm never alone. So join us as we dive deep into the story of love, vulnerability, and the quiet moments that can either build or break a relationship. This, my friends, is Benjarong. Vimy pulled out Vimy pulled out another card from the deck with her immaculately manicured, gem encrusted fingers. She held the card underneath her nose, just far enough for her to see, far away from our prying eyes. With a perfect poker face, no one could know whether she had the card she needed for the buffalo. The silence weighed down heavy on our necks. Putting the card back in her hand, she mulled over which one to discard. She bit her thumb, marking it with a bright pink lipstick, drumming her nails on the polished glass table and discarding the card on the mounting heap at the center. Dassi, Panki, I said, looking down at the newly discarded 10 of hearts, a little disappointed. This was not the card I had in mind. Vimy was not particularly known for her generosity for shelling out cards others might need, but I still had my hopes. I was disappointed and could make out the displeasure from the small sighs let out by Vandanaji on my side. Choting some pakoras, Vimy called her help in the kitchen to ensure our supply of crispy hot pakoras did not run out. Ask him to make some green chili pakora, Vimy, Vandanaji asked. She smiled, nodding towards Mantanaji. Sure. Chotu, make some green chili pakoras in the next round, she told Chotu, a lean boy in oversized shirt, as he came with an assorted tray. He must have hated us. Each time we came, he would end up making numerous rounds to the kitchen to serve us. Sometimes it was nimbu pani, the other times chai. The little boy was kept on his toes. I was always wary of eating too much, as one never knows what these servants put in the food when you're not looking. Vimy, this new ruby ring you have, I've never seen you wear this before. Vandanaji held Vimy's hand, looking at her finger. The ring was a colossal ruby, surrounded by tiny diamonds. On Vimy's slender fingers, it shone even brighter. Yes, it is. She smiled coyly. Mr. Malhotra got me this. When he went to Paris last month, she flaunted her finger for all of us to see, smiling lingeringly. Be careful, Vimy. I tell you, these men can never be trusted with these business trips, especially when they bring back expensive gifts. Vandanaji added before Vimy had done showing us the ring. Look at me. I know that bastard gave me wonderful presents whenever he had an affair, but I love him too much to leave him. Vandanaji's husband Vandanaji's husband had a sling of affairs, but she had stuck to him. She often said, why give a man a divorce so he can have it all and rather make him suffer and stay with him, like me? We called her Vandanaji to give her due respect to her age, although she insisted on being called Vandana. She was in her mid 50s, a little plump round the middle, but an easy demeanor which suited her. She would give us all her signature beer hugs, clinging to our necks for more than the courteous 2 seconds each time we met. This gave us all an opportunity to smell her expensive perfumes. But more than her perfumes, we liked her for the way she talked. Straight. She made no pretense whatsoever to hide the ugliness, what most of us would have already easily hidden. But of course, we know Mr. Malhotra. He loves our Vimy so much, I said, looking at Vimy's eyes. She was smiling with a quiet elegance. Oh, of course, there is no denying. Vimy is very lucky. Mr. Malhotra is a good man, a rarity these days, Vandanaji added. Wealthy and decent. We all laughed. I watched then. Vimy and Mr. Malhotra. Their laughter still sweet, their love so evident. 11 years of marriage, two children, and yet their romance was as alive as ever. I envied her, not for her perfect life, but for the way she had everything I secretly longed for, what had faded in my own marriage. If only I had a fraction of what she had, of the happiness she had. Your turn, Vimy said, pointing to me. I was still looking at her ring, thinking about the last time my husband had given me something. I clearly did not remember. As I glanced at Vimy's diamond ring, the thought of my own empty hands stirred something deep inside me, like the hollow feeling of being unimportant in the world of abundance. My fingers twitched as I traced the worn edges of the cards. I picked out a card, nonchalantly, from the depleting deck. A few more cards were left until someone won. I threw a card without putting much thought to the game. It was a jack of spades that I discarded. Vandana ji looked at me a little surprised. You discarded a gulam, Priya? I looked up at her and then glanced at my cards to realize my folly. But it was too late. I could have used the card. Well, maybe. It was Vimy's turn again. She picked up my gulam and with utmost ease weighted her fingers on the cards and smiled. It was the smile of a winner. We had seen it far too many times. She carefully laid out the cards one by one, pressing the cards with her thumb as she laid them. The first was a jack of hearts, followed by a jack of diamonds, and then she finished off the trail by adding my newly discarded jack of spades. My Ghulam was smiling back at me mockingly. The game was over, and I had lost. It wasn't just the card game I was losing. I had made a simple mistake, a careless move, and somehow that mirrored the way things had been slipping out of my hands for months now. The silence between us felt heavier now, more real. My eyes wandered to the ring on Vimi's finger again, and for the first time in years, I didn't just envy her, I resented her. The way she smiled, the way Mr. Malhotra smiled back, it was a stark reminder of what I had been missing. Next time, we'll take you down, Vimy, Vandanaji laughed. Vimy smiled too. Let's have lunch, Vimy pointed out to the dinner table, which had been well laid out by Chotu while we were playing. It was lunchtime already, and we were too full to eat. I've put too much fat already, Vimy, Vandanaji pointed to her tires. Oh, Vandanaji, just a little won't hurt. I've made your favorite dahi vada and tamarind chutney. You've loaded me enough, my dear. Vimy, do send me the cake recipe you made last time. It was just superb. Sure, I will, smiled Vimy as she put around a chair for Vandanaji to sit at the very corner of the big table. Some stomach for the dessert, too. I've made tiramisu today, whispered Vimy as she passed me. Oh, Vimy, you're just perfect. I wish I had known that earlier. Don't worry, Priya. Don't worry, Priya. I'll pack some for you. She knew about my fetish for sweets and also that I was a fan of her cooking. I smiled back at her with a childish flutter in my heart. I had tried my hand at baking, but my cakes never turned out as good. I was comparing myself against the best and kept falling short. We enjoyed our lunch as Chotu served us with hot chapatis. Come, let me drop you, Priya, Vandanaji offered, as we left Vimi's home. It was hot and I had no car. My husband had dropped me at Vimi's house and I would have to take an auto for my way back home. Vandanaji, Vandanaji made way for me in her new Lantra. We sat on the plush cream seat covers, the smell of fresh plastic still hanging in the air, making a strange medley with the lavender car perfume. Achoo! God bless you, Priya. Have you got a cold? Vandanaji patted me. I nodded in denial. Priya, what happened to you in the last round? You just handed over the victory to Vimy just like that. She just snapped her fingers to show how quick it had been. I looked down in my hands, checking my nail paint. It had chipped off on several nails. The corners of the nails had a faint yellow hue. The turmeric had stubbornly stuck on them since morning. No matter how much I rubbed them, before leaving for Vimi's house, they stuck to me, mocking my middle class existence. I don't know what happened. One moment I was thinking something, and then the other, I was not there, I said. forcing down the lump which had formed in my throat, which I spoke. You're clearly distracted, my dear. Is everything okay? She put her warm hand on my back and stroked it. Tears filled up my eyes. Shit! Am I too easy? I thought. My face was hot with fury at my tears, which had been so easy to give me away. I blinked my eyes and looked out of the window, moving my face away from Vandanaji. I wanted to save myself from embarrassment. The yellow laburnums planted across the road had blossomed, braving the summer heat, passed in quick succession. The bright gulmohars added to the fury of the sun. It was the worst summer in Delhi yet. No, I said after taking a pause. There was no point in hiding from Randanaji. She was a motherly figure, but it was her chatty frankness which made me hide things from her. I could easily become a topic of a hot discussion for her next kitty session. Oh, do you know, Priya? Poor thing. She was crying. I could hear her say in my head. I would become the next poor thing, the epithet I did not want for myself. Yet at that moment, I wanted to just say it all, spill the beans out for everyone to see. I hate my life, Vandanaji. I just hate it. I try to keep everything together, my husband, my kids, but it's all slipping out of my hands. Silly tears ran down my cheeks. Oh, Priya, I can understand, I know. Could she? I thought. Sitting in an air conditioned, chauffeur driven car, could she really understand my plight? Running my house on a tight budget, yet pretending everything is fine? Counting every single penny I have? I could not tell my friends. They would not imagine my middle class nuance. I still kept the high class company because it had been a part of me all my life. Things started still not ready to face facts. Our status had fallen, that we were no longer rich. I knew they were husband I knew there were hushed whispers when I walked into a room. People stared at me, like I did not belong there. It was the truth, but I was just not ready to accept it. Not yet, anyways. Dinesh had been very supportive. He knew that I had seen a luxurious life ever since I was born and would not be able to cope without them. He had not even shared the financial details until we lost our car to the finance company, when he could no longer pay for it. It's ours. How can they take it back? I had reasoned. It was financed. I cannot pay for it any longer. I could see the pain in his eyes when he said that. I knew he would do anything to make me happy. That pained me even more. This shall this will pass, Priya. It's just a phase. We'll bounce back. Have faith. It had been 2 years since then, and money, rather the dearth of it, started to break us. How easy was it for people to say, money is not everything, but to me, it cost everything I had. Dinesh was working hard. It was, as he had put in, a phase, only we did not know the expiration date. First, our holidays were cut. I started visiting my mom's place during my kids' vacation. Our children's school was the next victim of the budget cuts. It felt it felt as if I had sliced a part of me when I had to take them out of school. This one is nearer, I reasoned with them. I could not tell them what we could not afford to pay the fees anymore. The benches are broken, Mama, Anisha told me on her first day to the new school. I hugged her. I hugged her. I'm sure the teachers are good, baby, trying to brave a smile while I looked in those big sad eyes. She missed her old friends. She was no longer invited to the birthday parties of her old school friends, and we could no longer afford to pay for one ourselves. How much more did we have to bear? I did not know. Dark circles got more prominent around Dinesh's eyes. We no longer discussed anything, especially not finances. He quietly kept an envelope under my pillow every month with money to run the house expenses. At least we have each other, I reasoned. Dinesh started to eat alone. He probably liked his company better. He became quieter as time passed. The silence stretched from across the dining table to our bedrooms. Silence, obscure and heavy, loomed between us as we lay on opposite corners of our giant bed. There was more to it than the intense silence that separated us. I yearned for his touch, to be one with him, in his agony and despair. It was mine too. The rummy session with Vimy and Vandanaji were the only solace I had. It made me forget my worries, even though just for a while. But the difference which separated us grew wider in each visit, or so it seemed to me in my mind. I would come back feeling more hollow and wounded after our rummy sessions. Vimy was kind. She knew about us, but never mentioned it. She never offered to help. She knew I was too proud to ask for assistance, especially monetary. Walking on a polished marble floors each time and seeing her flaunt a new piece of jewelry or a new important artifact made me more aware of my silence, of not being able to participate in the conversations. It is beautiful, Vimy. Where did you get these? Vandanaji asked Vimy, studying the porcelain turquoise blue teacups while sipping tea. She ran her fingers over the intricate mesh of geometric gold patterns embossed in the cup. It looked handcrafted. Each gold line looked painstakingly drawn to create an optical illusion over the turquoise space. The rim had a gold border along its edge, adding to the exquisiteness of the cup. Oh, these are Benjarong cups, Bimi said. From Thailand. Mr. Malhotra got these from me when we last visited Thailand. Bimi, please ask your husband to get me a set of 6 cups next time he visits. Vandanaji pleaded. Sure, I will. I felt the risen design on the surface of the cup. It felt expensive to me. It was the year after next when Dinesh got his break, though he had changed his business several times in the last 4 years. He came home one afternoon, a little before the kids usually come back from school. He was smiling. It reminded me of our old days. There was a hidden mischief in his eyes, a glint of boyishness which was lost. He entered the kitchen. Picked up a pakora kept in the tray to drain out the extra oil. The kitchen smelled of the hing I had just popped in the kadhai. Don't eat more, they are for the curry I'm making. He picked up one more, mockingly. I narrowed my eyes and looked at him. I did not know what made him act the way he did. He walked up. He walked up, closer to me, and took the ladle from my hands, kept it on the kitchen slab. He held my hands with my palms facing up and opened my fingers. My fingers had a mesh of cuts marked from choppings. He pressed his thumb on my palm, applying gentle pressure, just like he used to. His hands were warm. The warmth of his person spread across my body. This was the first time in the last 4 years he had attempted to come closer. My body melted at his touch. I looked up to face him. Our eyes met. I'm sorry, Priya, he whispered, for making you go through all this. I could not face it. I looked away, fighting my tears. My pent up feelings flushed my face. I know, I wanted to tell him, but my voice was held back far down. I wanted to just rest my head on his shoulders and tell him. I was tired, tired of the distance between us, of the silence which loomed on the dining table every single meal and in our bedroom, tearing us apart since our last 4 years. The school's kid, I know you hated it, he added. He rested his hands on my shoulders, brought me closer. It was the familiar scent of his skin which comforted me. I closed my eyes and wept, quietly. We held each other for what felt like ages. The agony of our reserve had been broken. Now don't wet my shirt, he said, pulling my face up. I smiled through my tears. I felt light-headed after so long. I dug my face again in his chest, wrapping my arms around his body, delving in the moment. I've got something to show you, he whispered, tucking my free hair behind my ears. I looked up, wiping my eyes with the back of my fingers. My coal had smudged. He placed in my hands tickets for a trip to Thailand. I looked up. He was smiling. Can we afford it? Yes, he nodded. We've got a new long-term deal with a client and overall business is looking good. What if this is just short-term? Wouldn't this trip be like wasting all we have? We could use this money for something much more. We can save it. Dinesh looked at my eyes, came near and pressed his thumb on my forehead between the brows, easing the worry lines on my head. I had been frowning, I realized. I did not want to enjoy the momentary comfort and return to the same state. The tickets worried me more than that they could excite me. We need this holiday. And no, This is not short term, I promise you. I knew we needed the holiday, but more than that, we needed each other. That day, we had the liveliest lunch. Dinesh listened to children's school routine with rapt attention, without leaving my hand from under the table, catching my glance once in a while. We reached the Delhi airport a little before the designated time. We did not want to miss the flight. The kids were visibly excited. Dinesh was dressed in the brightest orange we could find in the wardrobe. He must have dug quite deep to get that shirt out. He had not worn it for a long time. Despite the years which passed by, it suited him, got him this boyish charm back. The airport had been renovated because of the Commonwealth Games. They were to be held the following year, in 2010. It was the first time for us to visit it after the renovation. The high ceiling and the thick beige carpet made the waiting area appear bigger. Wall to wall posters captured the colors to perfection. The picturesque auburn evening sky blending with the sand, beckoning tourists to visit Rajasthan. Another poster with an emerging boathouse half hidden from view by the canopy of coconut trees in the backwaters of Kerala. We could have gone to Kerala. We will next time. Dinesh looked at me. I was playing the spoiler again, his eyes told me. We headed for our international flight to Bangkok and had a connecting flight to the Fifi Islands. Fifi! Anisha and Anuj had been repeating ever since they had known. After reaching the waiting area, Dinesh checked the boarding passes and passports, keeping them in an orderly fashion. I looked around, trying to look for some familiar faces I could spot. It was the start of a holiday season, and there were many travelers from Delhi, but none familiar. Just then, I saw Mr. Malhotra waiting outside the ladies' room. What luck, I thought. I had forgotten to tell Vimy that we were going to Thailand. Our rummy sessions had become sparse. I had opted out of them of late, not seeing any point in continuing them. Dinesh, I'll be back. I just spotted Vimy's husband. I'll meet her and get back soon. Our flight leaves in 30 minutes, so don't take long. Sure. I quickly picked up my bag and asked the kids to stay with Dinesh. Walking past the L row, I realized Mr. Malhotra had moved away from the waiting area. I looked around to see him. He was walking far ahead of me with Vimy. They must have left the kids with the grandparents for their romantic time together, I thought. Oh, how nice. I checked my watch. I still had 25 minutes. I could meet them and head back in time. Vimy was wearing her hair differently, as far as I could tell from her back. Mr. Malhotra had his arms around her waist as they walked. They did not seem to be in a hurry. I thought about calling out for Vimy, but it would be nice to catch them by surprise. The two lovebirds. Oh, I envied her. They sat down in their back towards me. I picked up my pace and, standing right behind Vimy, placed my hands on her shoulders and whispered in her ears, Hi, Vimy. The effect was sudden. She caught my hand and looked back. Only it wasn't Vimy. The woman wore a confused look. I looked to see the man beside her. Perhaps I had made a mistake in recognizing him. My eyes met the gaze of the man sitting next to the woman I took to be Vimy. I had not been mistaken. Mr. Malhotra looked back at me. He too had recognized me. The awkwardness of the silence between us was broken by the announcement for the flight to Bangkok. Sorry, I guess I was mistaken, I said at last. I left them and rushed to the gate number 6. The look on Mr. Malhotra's face stayed in my mind. Benjarong, I thought. I reached the gate where my family was waiting for me. Everyone had started to line up for boarding. Dinesh and the kids were waiting for me, waving their hands for me to acknowledge them. I kissed the kids, their innocent giggles grounding me for a moment before I reached for Dinesh's hand. His warm fingers curled around mine and I forced a smile, trying to shake off the thoughts swirling in my head. What took you so long? Dinesh asked, his voice warm, laced with a casual curiosity I'd always loved. His eyes met mine, and for a moment everything else seemed to fade. The weight in my chest, the tug of memories and doubts softened. Did you see Vimy? He asked again. The question was simple, but the underlying tone one of care. I could see in his face. He was worried for me, in his own quiet way. Yes, she's fine, I replied, my voice steady. I could feel the lie hanging in the air, but it wasn't the first time I had masked my feelings. Dinesh smiled, and in that smile I found the comfort of something familiar. A shared history of good and bad, of days spent laughing and days spent grieving. It was easy to pretend everything was fine when he was around. We stood close, our hands brushing together as I slipped mine into his fingers curled around mine, firm and reassuring, like they always had. There was no need for words. His touch said everything. I leaned in, resting my head on his shoulder for just a second, breathing in his scent. This world was real, and more importantly, it was mine. Thank you for joining us on Frisian Fiction today as we travel through Priya's journey, her silent battles, her hopes, and the fragile thread that hold her world together. If you found yourself reflecting on your own relationships or perhaps in the spaces between the silences, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts with me on social media or write to me at madhulikarachauhan@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories too. And don't forget to subscribe to Fusion Fiction. Don't forget to subscribe to Fusion Fiction on YouTube and Spotify. Until next time, take care of the ones you love. And maybe take a moment to listen to the silences between the words. They might just tell you what's really in their heart. Have fun until we meet again. This is Madhulika Ra Chauhan, and you are listening to Fusion Fiction.